Rue was first cultivated in England for its medicinal use, having been introduced by the Romans. It's more likely to be found in gardens in the British Isles and far less likely to appear in the wild, and in some ways it's fallen out of favour as a popular British plant. It's also called the herb of grace due to the fact that priests at one time sprinkled holy water from sprigs of rue. Now, astrologer William Lilly puts rue under Saturn's rulership, so it's hardly surprising that rue also meant to stain in the Victorian language of flowers. But let's dig into the folklore of rue in this week's episode of Fabulous Folklore. Hello there and welcome to Fabulous Folklore, the podcast for all things folklore, occult and just a bit weird. I'm your host Icy Sedgwick, blogger, fantasy author and your guide into these rather mysterious realms. I've got some rare things to show you, so come on in, take a look around, but be careful not to touch anything. These things sometimes bite. Well, hello there, and welcome back to Fabulous Folklore with me, your host, Icy Sedgwick. We are finishing up our month-long exploration of the folklore of more plants, and this time we're finishing off with rue, which was a plant that I'd heard of and I was aware of, but didn't really know a huge amount about because it's just not really that commonly found, particularly in the wild, which is where I usually encounter a lot of plants. Now, I will say in advance, the problem that I did have with this is there are different plants that have a form of rue as a common name, but they're not actually part of the Rutiaceae family. So, for example, there's the meadow rue, which is actually the thalictrum, and that's in the wider Ranunculacea family. So in this post, we're talking about Rutagraviolens or common rue, just to make sure that there's no confusion about what it is that I'm actually talking about. But we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to start off with the ability of rue to ward off evil. And as you've probably heard on this podcast before, various plants are believed to have the ability to do exactly that. And rue does it in several ways because it allows people to see witches or to ward off evil spirits and wrongdoers. So this isn't evil necessarily just in a demonic sense, but also people not being very nice sense as well. So in order to see witches, for example, there was a practice from the Tyrol region which saw people making bundles out of rue, broom, agrimony, maidenhair and ground ivy, which apparently allowed you to see witches. And there's also a theory that rue root was the plant moly, which is the plant that Hermes gave Odysseus to ward off Circe's enchantments in the Odyssey. I've also heard that was supposed to be snowdrops as well, but it kind of makes a little bit more sense that it would be rue, to be honest with you. Now, ironically, as well as it being used to help people see witches, rue also appears in various records as a herb actually imagined to be used by witches, so some plants seem to end up revealing the very beings that use them. And of course, it wasn't just witches that you might want to ward off. In ancient Rome, brides might wear wreaths of verbena, but people might also send them holly wreaths to send them good wishes, or they would send wreaths of parsley and rue to ward off evil spirits. And obviously there's already an episode on the folklore of parsley if you're interested in that. People in Venice would keep rue in the house to maintain their good fortune, although somewhat confusingly this apparently only extended to single family members, which to be fair is actually quite nice because normally single people get the short end of the stick, shall we say, but apparently rue was quite good for them. And elsewhere, planting rue by a doorway could protect the home and everything else in it. Now this one's quite ironic because one old saying also claimed that rue grew best if you'd stolen it from your neighbour's garden. So apparently it would protect your home, but it wouldn't stop anyone stealing the plant itself, which is quite funny. You could also sprinkle rue leaves around anything that you wanted to protect from jealous eyes, and some people also believed that sprinkling rue water around the house would kill fleas, which is obviously certainly a form of protection in and of itself. And if you prefer to ward off wrongdoers with more tangible means, you could simply boil your gunflint in rue and vervain to make sure that your shot was effective. Again, how anybody found that out in the first place, I don't know. But as well as warding off demonic and witchery type things, rue could also apparently ward off poison and its effects. And according to Athanasius Kircher, hemlock and rue hated each other and they could not live on the same ground. By comparison, you could plant fig trees and rue together and they would grow better. Now, I think part of this idea might come from the fact that people thought that rue could drive off any poison, so that would obviously include neighbouring poisonous plants like hemlock. But meanwhile, the idea of certain plants growing well together comes from the concept of companion planting, which you will find in a lot of farmers' almanacs and also just gardening books as well. So some plants, they just do better when you put them together. So it's quite interesting that rue and figs apparently work quite well together. Now, Mithridates of Pontus apparently kept an antidote to poison which involved rue, and it was made of 2 dry walnut kernels, 2 figs, 20 rue leaves and a grain of salt, and then you had to press those together firmly and eat it in the morning. John Gerard, the herbalist, also suggested eating rue leaves with walnut kernels or figs and mashing them together into a paste could apparently repel poison, venom and pestilence. Gerard also recited a Pliny teaching that you could crush rue leaves into wine and then drink the concoction as an antidote to poison. Even more, Dioscorides claimed that if you drank, and I quote, 12 penny weight of the seed, end quote, in wine, it would counteract a whole range of poisons and venoms, including wolfsbane, poisonous mushrooms, scorpion stings, spiders and snake bites. So quite a lot of weight is being put on the abilities of rue here. I have no idea how effective any of them were, but it's probably best not to try them. And also, when I mentioned about it being good for warding off pestilence, rue was often cited as a component of 4 thieves vinegar, which I have mentioned before because other plants are involved with it, most notably lavender and rosemary, but just in case you haven't listened to those episodes, 4 thieves vinegar dates to a plague outbreak in Marseille, where 4 grave robbers had apparently been plundering graves. Now, when they were caught, they claimed that they'd used this particular vinegar to protect them against contracting the disease, because obviously if you're going to be going around digging up plague bodies and robbing them, you do have to wonder how have these people then not caught the plague. There is an alternative version of the legend that sees the thieves actually invent their vinegar after they've been sentenced to bury plague corpses. So either way, the intention is the same. They're using the potion to stave off the plague. Different recipes include rue, garlic, rosemary, lavender, distilled vinegar and cloves as ingredients. But such was the belief in rue's ability to ward off plague specifically that when a rumour broke out that plague had been identified in St Thomas's Hospital, London in July 1760, the price of rue at Covent Garden went up by 40% overnight. So people were well into rampant profiteering even then. But this does bring us on to folk remedies using rue. As always, these do not constitute medical advice and they are presented for entertainment purposes only. Now, you might be thinking with the word rue, is that related to the idea of regret, as in you rue something happening, but the name actually comes from reo, I think I pronounced that properly, I'm probably not, in Greek, which means to set free because it helped with so many medical ailments, as in it was freeing you from whatever it was that was bothering you. Now, in English folklore, there was a belief that rue was only safe to use medicinally if you'd gathered it in the morning because people believed it was poisonous if picked later in the day. Now, the sap can irritate some people's skin, so if you do plan to handle it, wear gloves when you do so, just either way, because you might be one of those people who has a problem with it. People believed that you could improve your mental well-being using rue, and you would essentially use it to make wine. You need to crush fresh rue and then collect the juice in a saucer. Then at midnight, you would go out and collect dew from the garden and you would shake 9 drops onto the rue juice. Then you would add some of the herb honesty and then you'd use that mixture as your base to make wine, which all seems a little bit overly complicated, to be honest with you, considering that there's other plants that you can just use as a tea to improve your mental well-being. But I wanted to include it anyway. And in some places, rue was considered as a useful cure for madness as well. People might also give a bunch of rue to a judge during the assizes, both to represent mercy and to help ward off infection for the judge as well. Now, this was notably for something called jail fever, but it does echo the belief in rue's ability to stave off the plague as well. And on a way more mundane level, you could heat rue juice in a pomegranate rind, and then you would drop the heated rue juice into the ears to cure earache. And Dioscorides claimed that you could stop a nosebleed by putting rue juice up your nose. And probably a little bit more accessibly, eating rue after garlic or onions would apparently neutralise the smell on your breath. If you boiled rue with dill, fennel seed and sugar in wine, that could apparently see off stomach pains, coughs, ague and gut problems. And rue was also supposed to help with a variety of pain conditions. So if you bruise the leaves and then apply them to the skin, a little bit like a poultice, they're supposed to ease sciatica pain. Like I mentioned in the other episode where sciatica came up, I would be more likely to just go and see my physio. Mostly because I just kind of think that it's getting the spine active again that's the issue. You don't just want to kill the pain without sort of solving the problem. But there we go. Likewise, applying the fresh leaves to the temple was also believed to relieve headaches. And as a constant chronic headache sufferer, I'm like, I'll probably just take some paracetamol, thanks. But boiling rue with vinegar was supposed to be good to cure a stitch in the side or chest, shortness of breath or joint pain. So you can see how rue is a little bit like lemon balm in that it's got a whole range of conditions it's supposed to be good for. Whether or not it works, bearing in mind a lot of these came from remedies that were collected in like 1597 or in the 19th century. It's a bit of a strange one, really, but there we go. Now, despite all of these medicinal and protective qualities, rue does appear in folklore elsewhere with the ability to help you have prophetic dreams, which is quite cool. So if you wanted to dream of your destiny, you could make a nosegay of various coloured flowers. It doesn't specify what they are. But then you needed a sprig of rue and yarrow that you'd taken from a grave. You would then sprinkle all of that with oil of amber using your left hand, and then bind it around your head under your nightcap, which had to be made from clean linen. The idea was that you would then go to sleep and you would then dream of your destiny. An alternative method saw you gather a sprig of rosemary, one of rue, a red rose and a white rose, a blue flower and a yellow flower, and then 9 blades of long grass. You would bind all of that together with a strand of your hair before sprinkling it with the blood of a white pigeon and salt. You would then put the whole thing under your pillow, and again you should dream of your destiny. I can't help thinking that that charm was going quite well right up until the addition of pigeon blood. So obviously we're not about cruelty to animals here at Fabulous Folklore, so I would highly avoid that you either adapt that one so you're not using pigeon blood, because I don't really see what that would really do, or just avoid that one altogether. There's got to be something that you could use as an alternative. But anyway. The other thing that I wanted to cover with rue just before we finish up is normally I cover love magic for people wishing to draw a partner to them or occasionally trying to strengthen an existing relationship. If you've listened for any length of time, you'll know that that's a particular favourite of mine. But of course, love magic as a whole is quite a big umbrella, so it naturally also includes people harmed by love as well. And E.M. Leather actually describes an incident in Herefordshire in which a girl went to the wedding of her former lover. She wasn't exactly going to wish him well, though, because she threw a handful of rue at the groom and his new bride as they left the church. And apparently she yelled, "May you rue this day as long as you live," as she did so. The rue had come from the churchyard itself, and she threw it at them between the church and the churchyard, meaning it was between hallowed and unhallowed ground. And according to local folklore, the curse did indeed work. The story unfortunately didn't explain what happened in order for it to have worked, but apparently this girl got her own back. So, yes, love magic is quite a large field, and I thought it would be interesting to include something that wasn't entirely positive, shall we say. So what do we make of the folklore of rue? To be honest with you, it's a little bit mixed. On one hand, you've got this idea of being able to ward off evil, be that evil spirits or be that people who maybe wish you and your home ill, and that's where you would plant it by your doorway. It gave you the ability to see witches and so on, or you could then use it to ward off poison and pestilence, both of which I imagine would probably be quite useful to people. But then at the same time, it's weird how you've then got this range of medicinal remedies which are kind of trying to use the plant in a much more practical sense. And then it wanders off into this side view of now you can use it to curse people, which seems a bit weird if it's supposed to be able to ward off evil. But then you've also got that additional sort of charge of then being able to use it to dream of your destiny. So rue is one of those strange plants where I'm surprised it's kind of fallen out of fashion in the way that it has. But that is indeed what has popped up in the folklore. It does have other uses which I've deliberately not included, just simply on a health and safety basis. So if anyone's sitting there going, why haven't you mentioned X, Y, and Z? That's why. So hopefully you'll understand that I've kept it for like the pain killing or prophetic side of things in order to get through the episode the way that I have. I do hope that you've enjoyed the folklore of rue. Indeed, I actually hope that you've enjoyed all of the folklore of plants that we've covered in this particular little mini-series. And I've also started doing an additional thing in my emails because I know a lot of people are starting to wonder if they should actually just jump ship from social media. I won't be, because obviously it's a place where I do connect with people and obviously it's quite useful in that regard. But a lot of people don't want to use Instagram anymore. So what I'm doing, and this is by request of my subscribers, is I'm now also putting an extra snippet of folklore about the subject for that podcast episode in the email. So basically I send out an email once a week saying, the new episode is out, here you go. Or you can get a monthly one which collects them all together if you prefer that. And now I'm also adding, as I say, this snippet of folklore to the weekly one, plus something exclusive that I'm not going to be putting on social media. They're not extra huge bits, it's basically like a few lines each, but it is additional folklore. And obviously, at least in that way, if you're getting my emails, if Meta suddenly fell over tomorrow, you would still get my emails. So if you prefer to chat in the inbox, then that's obviously a good thing to do. If you want to sign up for my email list, it's really easy. Just go down into the show notes and look for the bit where it talks about like getting your guide to protecting your home using folklore, and just sign up. Some people, for some reason, then mark the email going, do you really want to sign up for this email list as spam, which is really bizarre because you've asked for that email by signing up. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But if you want to sign up, then you will have to confirm that you want to be on the list because of GDPR. If you don't tick the box saying that you're happy for me to contact you, again, for GDPR, I can't email you. So some people sign up and then don't check that box, so I can't email you. So yeah, it's not that convoluted, but some people seem to make it more complicated than it needs to be. But if you sign up there, you'll get a PDF about just different methods of home protection using folklore. I am going to write a new one at some point, so you'll automatically get that one as well on a different topic. And yeah, so you can keep in touch through email as well if you prefer. As always, thank you for the reviews. Thank you for the coffees this month. Thank you for the Patreon support. I did put out the episode about Legends of Stirling Castle. I think what that was. That's really bad. The Legends of Stirling Castle was the bonus episode for Patreon supporters. So if you support at $3.50 a month or more, you will have gotten access to that as well. And yeah, so I hope that you have a marvellous week ahead. Next month is going to be the folklore of like the cities of Northern England, and the main reason I'm doing that is because for the first 2 Saturdays of July I'm actually away at a conference, so I've gone back to what I already had existing blog posts about basically. So we're going to start off with Sheffield and then York, so they're going to be the first 2 episodes in July. I can't remember what the other 2 are. I think it's Carlisle and Sunderland, but I can't remember. Anyway, they're the ones we're going to be doing for July, and then August, I can't remember at all what the theme is, but there is one. So hopefully you'll be back next week to hear about the Legends of Sheffield. Cheerio. Well, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, feel free to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, because that helps other people find the show too. It also takes between 4 and 6 hours to research, write, record and edit these episodes, so if you want to help support my time in doing that, then you can buy me a coffee, or you can join the Fabulous Folklore family on Patreon and enjoy extra benefits, including exclusive episodes and articles and even illustrated talks. All the links you need are below, and thanks in advance.